Hello and welcome to Chatty AF, the Anime Feminist podcast. I'm Caitlin, an editor and contributor for Anime Feminist, as well as my own blog, I Have a Heroin Problem. Vrai, Dee, why don't you introduce yourselves today?
Sure. My name's Vrai Kaiser. I'm an editor and contributor to Anime Feminist. You can find me on the internet and the things I do on Twitter at WriterVry, or the other podcast I co-host at TrashPod.
Hi, and I'm Dee Hogan, a writer and editor for Anime Feminist. I also run the anime blog The Josei Next Door, and you can find me on Twitter at Josei Next Door. Spoiler alert, I'm running a fever today, so if my contribution to this podcast is 90% me fangirling about the scenes I really liked, I apologize in advance.
No, that's fine. Look, I knew when you brought me onto this podcast that I was here to be the cranky one who was mad at things, and I can fill that today.
Oh, I think Caitlin and I are going to be mad at things, too.
Oh, yes, don't worry, we'll find things. But anyway, this is the, not the final watch-along of Fushigi Yugi, the penultimate one, with episodes 47 to 52, finishing up the TV series. So, as the conclusion of the TV series would suggest, this sort of brings everyone's arc to a close. And it starts off with Tamahome in the real world. Because he's been brought over by some reason.
Feelings.
Yeah, feelings. That's right. Everything kind of happens according to feelings. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what? He looks really good in modern clothes. And he has agrees with you. And he has to sort of confront his past. Also, Keisuke fanboys really hard.
It's adorable. Yeah, I guess as far as like opening arcs go, it's Tamahome's identity crisis. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where we start off here.
Yeah, it's just a character in a book.
It's a thing. It's a thing. Mm-hmm. He swirls dramatically in his trench coat. He walks past a rotoscoped concert.
That concert footage was weird.
Choices were made, I don't know why, beyond the fact that these last episodes kind of look really cheap, but bless their heart, they're trying.
I think they just blew out the budget.
I kind of feel that way too. They spent way too much money animating Hotohori's nipple armor. Not enough on these final fights. Sorry, yep. His armor makes me laugh every time he's on screen, and I try to take it seriously, and then I'm like, why are there little nipples on there? You don't need those.
It's empowering nipple armor.
I mean, if Hotohori feels empowered in it, who am I to judge? No shade. I just don't entirely understand the purpose. No, that concert scene as a kid, and I'm going to be recollecting for y'all my 4 a.m. Finale watch-along feels as we go, probably. That concert felt about 5 hours long, because we were like, why is this happening? Why is there a random concert in the middle of a cross-dimensional war? My belief is that the
Why
record
is there
label,
anything?
I think the record label was like, hey, you need to put a spotlight on these singers who have been doing like all of your insert songs. And so the anime company said, okay, we'll do that. You paid us a lot of money, record label.
Like I will say that the part of the concert where it is scoring Tamahome's dramatic run through the city, and he looks a lot like Suzuki for like a hot minute, and he's jumping over cars, and it's stupid but kind of glorious.
He's flying through traffic. Yes, I giggled.
It's so fucking dumb, but it's kind of good. Like, that part I'm okay with. Why did you need diegetic sound for your grand? I don't know, but fine.
It's more angsty that way.
Yeah, I feel for Tamahome in this moment because I think that it's a legit. How do I put this? It's kind of cool to me that Fushigi Yugi decided to take the concept of this is a fictional character in a book, like to as far as that concept will go. Mm-hmm. These characters actually do have to kind of reconcile with the fact that they're technically made up, and kind of Tamahome trying to figure out like what's the meaning of every shitty thing that's happened to me, or like these memories I have of childhood, if none of that is actually real.
Right.
Yeah.
Honestly, if I were Tamahome, I would be really angry at the writer. Just like, why the
Right?
fuck did you do this to me?
Which, you know, I do think, which kind of circles back to the sort of, much as I hate to bring it to Nakago, who I'm sure we'll talk about plenty later,
This
it kind of
fucker.
circles back to this idea of, like, the gods being kind of cruel. And this sense of, like, how do you make meaning out of what seems like kind of senseless suffering. Which I think is a running theme kind of throughout the show, but definitely in this back half and in a lot of the episodes we watched today, where it's that idea of, you know, if I'm going to die, or if, you know, if somebody needs to, you know, step up to protect somebody else, like, how do you make that moment mean something? And we talked about that a little bit last week with Chihiko dying and Miaka, you know, trying to stop the Seiryu ceremony to make that sacrifice, like, count, and she fails. And so this, I don't know, there's kind of a fascinating concept that I think it's just, like, right under the surface of a lot of these later episodes of kind of this fight between, like, chaos and I don't know,
Order?
Not necessarily order, even just what you do to give meaning to that, I guess.
It's like nihilism versus.
Well, it's hopeless
God,
versus
why-
hopeful nihilism. Like, nothing
Yeah.
matters,
There
and
you
therefore
go.
everything matters,
Yeah.
or nothing matters, and therefore destroy it all.
Which is kind of the Tamahome Nakago, like, conflict, if we want to get, you know, really
Yeah.
really dig into this from a philosophical perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
Although Tamahome gets kind of fatalistic about it in a way that I don't know that the series knows how kind of alarming it is.
His whole speech when he comes back and is like, well, it's cool because it turns out I just exist entirely for you, Miaka. I live because of you.
That was.
I wrote bleg in my notes.
Yeah.
Ugh, yeah. Like
they've come so far, and now this is the note
Like,
we're ending on.
Yeah, like me, Tamahome is a good boyfriend, but the way, like, this show sort of, like, I've never been able to really get behind how the show really, like, romanticizes codependence.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always kind of bugged me. There's a part of me that kind of I sort of get the fantasy that the series is playing with there. I get the fantasy of and in a way kind of like a gender role reversal of, you know, the man who was born to love the woman and do anything for her, and, you know, he's there to serve her and so, like, especially from, you know, an early 90s perspective, I think there is something kind of cool about it, but it doesn't but then there's also this kind of bigger issue of I just don't care for stories like that. I want there to be more of kind of a mutual support.
Right, especially
it doesn't hold up, and it makes me cringe, and again it makes me go bleg.
Definitely.
But I can kind of appreciate it from that perspective of kind of the romantic fantasy and the I guess trope challenge it's doing there.
Yeah. Although I did, when he was like, oh, you fell in love with me even though I was just a character in a book, I'm just like, yeah, what teenage girl into anime hasn't done that, though? Like, who did not have a crush on an anime character?
I feel like most
up?
teenagers have crushed on some kind of fictional person, whether that's in anime or novels or what have you, at some time or another. So yeah, it's, which again, it kind of plays into that sort of hashtag relatable teen experience of I love this fictional person who I can't actually be with, but, you know, they're just so awesome.
And if they knew, they would be so grateful to you.
Yeah, you just go hang out with them on the astral plane. And
the Snape wives would like a
you.
word. Sorry.
Oh gosh. No, it's okay.
Fushigi Yugi was around in, like, the height of the astral plane thing, too, which, to inform the uninformed, is the concept that all characters exist, and if you love them, you really, really love them, then you can access this sort of plane where all of the worlds combine and you can meet the fictional character that you love and be together.
I was not aware of that.
Oh, no?
No, I missed
big
that
thing
memo
back
at
in
some
the day.
point. Yeah. Well, I guess that's basically what Fushigi Yugi is doing.
Yes.
Although, and I mean, we'll talk about this when we get towards the ending. It twists or it plays around with that a little bit.
It does. So, and then a couple of times, most of the finale takes place in Tokyo. Mm-hmm. But we do stop over into the universe of the Four Gods a couple of times.
Mostly to watch people die.
Exactly! God damn it, you stole my line. I was guessing exactly that.
Some people die in these episodes,
Yeah,
a few.
this was the part where my friend and I became convinced that everyone was going to die, and we were just like we were just like almost numb and like sort of just bracing ourselves for our most beloved characters to bite the bullet. Mm-hmm.
It's fine. The good boys are fine.
It's a tense stretch. The good boys are fine, but we'll talk about that later. Caitlin, I'm guessing you were probably gonna spin that towards Mitsukake to start us off.
Yeah, well, because he was the first one to die in this stretch. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I can see why you thought everyone was going to die, because the deaths that we did visit were pretty pointless.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so, like, because Mitsukake is injured, and he's wearing himself out, tending to these other injured people. He has no powers. And then someone comes along with a baby named Shoka. And he's like, well, I'm going to give my life to to save all these people. I will kill myself to save all of these people. And that kind of frustrated me, because it was like, well, there's going to be more people tomorrow. And there's going to be more people the day after that. Like, this is a war, and you are genuinely a doctor. Like, you know how to heal people other than just using your powers. While you are saving all of these people today, there's going to be so many more other people that won't have anyone to help them now.
Right, and there's no sense that he's passed on his knowledge. Now they've got nothing. Like, this is not him living on that way.
I assume there are other doctors in Conan, you guys. Mitsukake is not the only doctor in the entirety of Conan.
In the emotional logic of this scene, it seems like he is.
Yeah, because there was no one else to help them for some reason.
Reasons.
And, yeah, it just seemed... Yeah, it seemed pointless to me. And if you really, really reflect... I guess... If you really, really reflect on his character, it makes sense. Because he's definitely been shown himself to be sensitive to mass suffering. And he's, like, very, in his backstory that we got however many dozen of episodes ago.
Right.
He's sensitive to the suffering, like, of groups of people. He never got over Shoka. So, like, he wasn't
able to save Noriko or Chiriko.
He wasn't able to save Noriko or Chiriko.
And that is his job. His job on the team is to keep people from dying. And he, failed. Feels like he failed that.
Right.
Well, and he saved other people, like, so many times. Like, he saved Tamahome.
Yeah, but, I mean, you can't tell me that you've never been in a situation where all you could focus on were the things you did wrong rather than the things you did right.
Yeah.
Oh, are you kidding? I have anxiety.
I'd even...
Mitsukake is very sad.
Like, if the anime even wanted to sell me on the fact that, like, he's quietly had a death wish since Shoka died, I'd buy that, fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think this has all been so backgrounded that it doesn't feel earned, is my issue.
Yeah, like, you have to really, really, like, it doesn't feel natural. You have to really, really work on putting the pieces together for it to feel like it makes sense, for it to not feel pointless and just that it's happening to make you sad.
It's kind of like Chiriko's death, where I think both of those characters get more time in the manga and their arcs make a little more sense. But
Mitsukake doesn't really.
Yeah,
Not really. Yeah,
but
This death scene is much better in the anime than the manga. In the manga, it's almost a footnote.
Wow.
he's a big, burly, manly man. He is not Uwatase's type.
Gotcha. Well, I was gonna say that like most of what makes his death scene effective here is the fact that it makes Chichiri sad.
Well, and I actually wanted to say I think Chichiri would agree with Caitlin. Like he is, and most of the stuff with Chichiri is not in the manga, and I think it's wonderful. And I have a running theory that that someone on the anime staff like Chichiri is their favorite character, and we can get more into that in the OVA because they definitely give him more to do in this last arc, which I appreciate. No, his reaction to it is really good. It's very raw in a way that we haven't really seen from him. And I think that sense of like, I am right here with this person trying to get them to not do this thing, and I can't stop them. I think that hits him pretty hard. And he argues with Mitsukake because Mitsukake's like, it's my fault they died. And he's like, no, none of us could save them. That it's not your fault. I am going to disagree with you both. I admit that I do have a lot of supplementary information in terms of the light novel and the visual novel that probably makes this scene hit a little bit harder for me. That having been said, I think there's a philosophical question at the core of this, which is either Mitsukake sits there and goes, well, I'm going to let these people today die, who I could save, for the possibility of maybe saving more people tomorrow. Or do I save who I can when I can? And there's a lot of Buddhist imagery in this scene, which I think comes back to the idea of compassion for all. And when Chichiri is trying to get Mitsukake to rest, he's like, everybody's important. I can't look at somebody and just let them die. And so I think when you argue that his death is pointless, I think that's really harsh, because he does save everyone within like 100-foot radius by doing this. And I think that kind of ties into that concept of like, how do sacrifices have meaning or are given a point? And I think it ties into Chichiri's rage during that scene when the soldiers get up and are like, oh, I guess we should go back to killing each other. And so he kind of screams at them about this idea that, no, you're not going to make this meaningless. He did this to save everyone indiscriminately. Both sides of the conflict, and you're not going to make that be a waste. I think it's a really fascinating and effective scene given how small it is. And I think that philosophical question of like, again, do you let people in front of you suffer because maybe you can save someone else tomorrow, or do you do everything you can at that moment? I think that's a worthwhile
right question. And I think that's a decision that people have to make for real, like all the time. Like this is a real choice that people have to make. And my personal philosophy has been, do what you can in the day, because tomorrow is another day, and you're going to have to do what you can again that day. And that's sort of how I've always thought of it. Is like.
And again, I think Chichiri would very much agree with you. I think that's his philosophy as well.
But okay, so maybe it was harsh to say it was pointless, because he did save a lot of people doing that. You know what was pointless? Hotohori's death.
He died the way he lived, Caitlin. He died the way he lived. Pointlessly.
And like, because
and Vrai cackles.
Fuck this guy. I'm done with him.
It was just such like a fucking idiot move. There was nothing gained by it. The sole emperor of a company with no heir yet.
Country.
Hoki's pregnant, but infant mortality, and guess no current heir, pregnant wife, goes to confront their incredibly powerful enemy alone when he personally has no powers. And he gets his ass kicked, and it makes no difference.
No, he gives Nakago a scratch. He sacrifices himself, like you said, leaves his country without a ruler, his wife without a husband, his unborn son without a father, to give somebody a scratch. And it's not like it was unavoidable. It's not like Nakago was at the gates of the palace, and Hotohori had no choice but to stand there and fight him in an attempt to, like, give people a chance to escape. Nakago was like, we're withdrawing. We out. You get to keep your country. Bye. Like, he did not have to do that. And he knew he wasn't going to win. And I get his anger. Like, I totally get Hotohori's rage in this moment, because Nakago's basically like, yeah, I murdered a bunch of your people because I needed a distraction. Mm-hmm. So I could then turn around and murder another emperor. Nakago's really good at killing emperors, by the way. It's his roaring
it's on his resume. It's right there at the top.
This week. Yeah. So, like, I understand the anger. I understand the fear about, oh, he's going after Miaka, because that's how he taunts him. But why would he go and confront him in the first place out on this battlefield? Again, he knows he has the responsibility to a country, and then he just throws it all away for, like, this, I guess, this, like, concept of, like, nobly giving his life for Miaka. I personally think Hotohori kind of had a death wish too, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a hard life.
Yeah. Well, it's so frustrating, because it seems like leading before this, his arc was kind of like, you know, learning that he can't in fact forsake his duties as ruler and go running off with the Suzaku Seven, until this time when it's fine and it gets him killed. And guess what? Guess what, Hotohori? Now there are 2 power vacuums in 2 countries, and you know what? Hoki's back will be first against the wall when the revolution comes.
Jesus. Hoki did nothing to deserve that.
No, she didn't, but guess what? She's the symbol of the old regime now.
Oh, God.
You have killed your wife and child.
Generally speaking, the people of Konan seemed pretty happy with Hotohori. I mean, he wasn't a tyrant. Like, we talk about what a shitty emperor he was, but, I mean, he was not the Kuto emperor. He'll be a footnote in history, like, in the long run.
Yeah, apparently they had, like, strong enough infrastructure that it didn't really matter that he was...
Send Chichiri there to be an adult.
I really don't think Chichiri wants to run the country.
Oh, God. But, yeah, like... But the death scene was very sad.
Yeah,
like,
the death scene itself is
I did feel
good.
an emotion.
So did I.
Like in the tagline.
Mm-hmm. We had emotions. Well, I had a lot of anger, and then he held up the picture, and Takahito Koyasu's voice got really, like, sad and wobbly, and then Miaka Sayaraki, the voice actress there,
she was very good in this scene.
She was, yeah.
Yeah, like it was a genuinely sad scene.
It is.
It was just...
But the lead up to it is anger, and then they do the flashback reel, and I'm like, oh, that's right, you kind of sucked. I'm remembering all these moments in the past when you kind of sucked.
Well, thanks for reminding me.
There's so many things in this stretch of episodes, and in this show in general, but I feel like it was particularly noticeable in the last few episodes, where things just happened that had no basis in logic, that did nothing to drive the plot, but they were there to make you feel something. Mm-hmm. You know, when Tamahome's fighting Suboshi, his family holding Suboshi's limbs.
The dumbest fucking thing.
Yes. It made no sense.
It doesn't. It made
no sense. I mean, and like Hotohori's death, like, it was pointless, but it was enough to make me feel sad. Mm-hmm. You know, that, like, Tamahome's family just appearing was just fucking stupid.
A cynical person might call it emotionally manipulative.
Oh.
And I mean, there is a very fine line between emotionally affecting and emotionally manipulative. I would agree with this. This moment felt manipulative because it was like, I don't understand why that happened.
Right, like,
to make you have an emotion.
Fushigi Yugi is a very emotionally based series, but I think in its best moments, its emotional moments run on their own internal logic. Like, why does Tamahome come to the real world with Miaka? Because of feelings, but also, like, at the very beginning of the series, even if they're both, you know, destined or whatever, Yui and Miaka are holding on to each other. So whatever, it's planting and payoff. It's emotions. But stuff like the family. It's well, this has no basis in anything. Why has this happened? What am?
Why are they here?
No one knows.
What are they doing?
No, that scene really doesn't work for me at all.
Yeah.
Which, again, anime original. Someone on the anime staff was like, we should add ghosts to this scene. And maybe they wanted to set the stage for the fact that there would be ghosts later, but I feel like the Genbu warriors already kind of set the stage for the fact that ghosts were a thing, so we didn't necessarily need them. But they happened, so...
Yeah.
So Suboshi dies, and I'm not sad. Sorry,
no,
Suboshi.
fuck that guy.
I wasn't sad this time. Like, I'm over him.
There was a time in my life when I was sad about it. I think I told you guys this. I don't think I've said this on the podcast. When I was watching this with a group of friends back in college, one of the friends I was watching it with had seen the show as a kid. And she kind of liked Suboshi. And we got to that part, and she was like, "Aw, I liked Suboshi." And my other friend turns to her and just goes, "He murdered children!" And that's kind of where I am with Suboshi. It's like, he murdered children.
Well, and also, like, I think the point of sympathy that they're trying to sell is that he's super in love with Yui, but he never listens to anything she tells him ever.
Yeah, she told him not to kill Miaka.
Yeah, he's just
like, I have to kill Miyaka. I'm like,
yeah,
no.
He's just kind of, like, obsessed with her.
He is. Suboshi has kind of an obsessive personality with both her and his brother.
Yeah, and although, like, I did not love the part with, like, Amiboshi being like, why am I sad? Oh, it's like a part of me disappeared. Actually, no. It's like a part of me came back. And I'm like, fuck you. Twins are not two halves of a whole. We are individuals. Separate people.
Oh, gosh, that probably does get really obnoxious for you, huh?
Oh, God, I hate... It's like, oh, twins have a special relationship. Trope. Whatever. I'm over it. Yeah, some twins do. I don't with my sister. I barely talk to her. But, like, I don't care about that. But, like, two halves of a whole. It's like, fuck off. Ugh. Anyway. That's neither here nor there.
See, Vrai, we told you to find things to be angry about, too.
Suboshi died as he lived. Annoying.
A couple of the emotional beats that really did work with me. There were two, like, really major, like, this is happening largely because emotions, but they still work for me. Tamahome's sort of, like, semi-afterlife dream with the wedding.
It's so cheap, but it was so good. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
It was cheap, but, like, when he was sitting and talking to his father, I was tearing up.
Yeah, that part was really sweet. I was really enjoying it, and then they just had to shit on Noriko one last time for the road.
Yeah.
And I was so angry that it was hard for me to enjoy the rest of the scene. Because I was like, I thought we had moved past this. But apparently no. Apparently
Noriko was
in one last dig.
Just Noriko.
Even though Noriko looked amazing in that outfit. Yeah. Noriko was right.
Noriko looked like an enka singer.
Oh, it was so good. It was real good.
But yes, it's a sweet scene where everybody's back, and it's that sense of like what could have been in Tamahome's kind of perfect world. So
I think that's what they were going for with Noriko's horrible death date fantasy, and it actually mostly worked here until again they were terrible to Noriko.
Yeah, but the scene where he was like, the part in particular where he was just sitting and talking to his dad was like, was what really got to me.
And his dad was just kind of talking about how proud he was of him and wished him happiness, and I was like, oh, I'm glad Tamahome got that ghost closure.
Yeah,
it was good.
I mean, and maybe like my personal context made it more meaningful right now. But like, yeah, it was but the big one, the big part that actually did make me cry was when the ghosts of the ones that died came back, and Miaka sees Noriko, and she just walks over to them and just leans into them. And it was just I knew
it was coming, and I was still like, when it happened.
Like, I mean, like everyone appearing was really good, and like Noriko catching that building was really good, but just I feel like in that gesture, like in that just little bit of body language, there was so much just like love and trust and support being communicated. And that's really what Noriko as a character like is really when I feel like when you watch it, yeah, like when I watched it young, it was like, oh, Noriko's really funny. They have all, there's a lot of funny jokes about them, and they have like, they interact in a really fun way with the other characters. But like, as I've gotten older, like just Noriko's become like the mom friend, and like, they treat the other characters with like just so much love, and seeing that communicated so strongly in that one moment was really touching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reunion scene is very good. There's a background shot of Tasuki like giving Chiriko the biggest hug, and I was like, oh no, I died a little bit on the inside. That was so good.
And he's like, hey kid, how you doing? And Chiriko's like, I'm dead, Tasuki.
I was dead, so not great.
So like not great.
Yeah, Chiriko, you're okay. No, I was dead. But it's a very sweet moment. Well, and again, I freaking love. So there's a lot of things in that kind of final stretch of episodes that is stuff I really like. And one of them is that the group comes together and like through the power of like just emotions and caring and support, they like feed their energy into the hero to give them the strength to take down the bad guy. It's in Sailor Moon all over the place too. But I like that sense of like you can't do it alone, and I think this final stretch of episodes does a pretty good job. Like in terms of like, it's like clearly still Miaka and Tamahome are like the heroes, and so Miaka summons the god and has the mental fortitude to survive this influx of power, and Tamahome is the one who gets to punch a hole through Nakago, which seems fair.
Yeah. What with all the sexual assault?
But neither of them does it alone. The other warriors are there, and they're, like, neither of them could do that without the support of the other people, looking after them and caring for them. And I really like that in my stories. And I think we see that not just with them, but with a lot of the other characters. The other thing Hotohori's death scene pisses me off because it is a pointless noble sacrifice. The theme or concept of the willingness to like put yourself out there for someone or something that is like the most important thing to you, I really like though. And kind of to compare Hotohori's pointless scene to the very good scene of Tasuki and Chichiri going, well, we're gonna die, but we need to buy Miaka time, so let's do this. Is like a hoorah moment for me. Like I clenched my fist. My friend and I looked at each other because they were our favorite characters, and it was like 4 a.m. and we were very tired, and we were like, at least they're gonna go out fighting. At least they're gonna go out together. I love that scene. I might have watched it like 3 times.
Aww.
Yeah. Did you get a flood of relief when you first realized that they were going to make it?
Yeah, when Miaka started because I figured Miaka was gonna make it. But I thought they were gonna die buying her enough time to make it to like whatever was going on next. I thought they would die buying her time, and I was like, "Oh, this sucks." But at least it's gonna be, because to me that is actually a noble sacrifice. That would have accomplished something. They had no other choice. Like their only other choice was to basically just like stand aside and let Nakago kill Miaka, and they're not gonna do that.
Right.
So in that like that kind of like noble last stand scene to me is like very, very affecting. And and then when Miaka starts summoning Suzaku, I was like, oh my god! Yes!
Oh yeah, I mean,
we might have high-fived each other. It was a big deal.
This watch through was like, I legitimately got chills when Miaka started the chant.
Yeah,
like
Araki's voice acting is really good in this last stretch. Like it's really good.
She's very good. She's done a good job of I think, slowly, like, imbuing Miaka with some maturity and kind of inner strength, and I think you really feel that in this last stretch, to the point where it feels like she has had a proper character arc, and she's grown a lot, and she's to a point where she can handle, withstanding the injuries, to try to help Yui and then to summon this god to save her friends and the world. So when she starts to stand up and say that chant, and there's just so much just like raw, just kind of anger and determination in her voice, it's very good.
Yeah, it's really just, and the scene with Miaka and Yui confronting each other when they reconcile.
My heart. Oh my god, it got me.
I really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know you have a particular affection for Yui.
Yeah, and it's really, because, like, she definitely had things to atone for, and I thought the anime kind of handled it really well, because, like, she sacrificed herself thinking that would be it, and that's what she had to do to make up for all that she'd done, and she meant it sincerely, and then the show didn't write her off as, well, I guess it's sad she died, oh well. Like, the fact that she gets a second chance is really good, and their friendship is so good, and
yeah,
they fight for each other, and Yui, Yui acknowledges the mistake she's made. Nakago's a piece of shit, because Yui confronts him, and he's like, no, this was all your decision. I just facilitated. I mean, what you wanted to do.
That's more abuse. He's sitting there and being like, no, hey, I may have told you, I may have lied to you, but you made all of these choices on your own. It's like, no, she is a child and you are an adult, and you knew exactly what you were doing when you were manipulating her into every choice she made. And that was, and
I mean, for him to be like, you should be grateful to me for saving you from that. I was like, oh, fuck off, Nakago.
I hate it so much.
I kind of wish the series had been a little bit more explicit in Yui acknowledging how much Nakago had done wrong to her, I think. But, and I just say that, explicitly. I think implicitly it does a very good job with that, because Yui does turn against him and is willing to sacrifice herself to help Miaka, and to kind of put an end to, what she has semi-accidentally caused here. And so, I think again, I wish there was a little bit. I really just want Yui to punch Nakago across his stupid face.
Yes.
Well, but I understand why that didn't happen. Like, within the characters, it makes sense for that not to happen. And so, I think the way they handled it was really good, because it doesn't absolve Yui of everything, but it does a very good job of showing what a rat bastard Nakago is, and how much of this is on him.
Well, and I think it's important to the show's attempts to make her flawed and semi-complicit, but also a victim. The fact that she doesn't die, which I think would imply that there's this concept of filthiness that she could never come back from, which would be really unfortunate, given the things they deal with in her character arc.
Right. Yeah. This tragic figure who is only absolved by death.
Yeah. And I do wish
that Miaka fights for her, and
I think living on to have to fix her mistakes and face the damage she did, I think is much more satisfying.
And that moment where she says to Miaka, "You must be so angry," and Miyaka's like, "I'll yell at you later."
It's good. It's good
because Miyaka's not
moment. Yeah.
Yes, Miaka does get to yell at her, but also they friends.
And I do like that Miyaka's like, oh, it's okay, that she's not like, oh, it's okay, I'm over it. It's like, no, Yui's gonna hear it from her later, but that's not what matters in that moment.
No, we'll have time to talk this out and sort it through, and we'll get angry, and then we'll still have a relationship, and that's really important. Vrai, I feel like there was something in there you wanted to say, and we kept kind of talking over each other.
Yeah,
no, it's all good. Well, I think this might lead us into the other thing, is that, at the very, very end, when Miaka and Yui are talking, and Yui mentions that Nakago is the part of herself that she's kind of scared of. I think that's a really interesting idea, that they just they deal with it a little bit implicitly, but they just kind of shove it in there at the end, and it makes me angry because everything about how Nakago's character makes me angry.
Yeah.
Which I guess, is that a segue into Nakago, or? Sorry,
I have one more. I do have one more thing that I wanted to say about that. The whole thing with Miaka and Yui is that I feel like in a lot of entertainment, the refrain is, if these fucking people would sit down and fucking talk to each other, everything could be figured out. and the moment that Yui and Miaka sit down and talk to each other, like really talk, that Yui's ready to listen. Mm-hmm. They do figure everything out.
Yeah, I think that ready to listen is important though, because there were times in the past when Miaka tried to talk to her, and Yui was just in too much of a hurt, kind of raw place to really care what Miaka had to say, I think.
Yeah. Well, and that Yui had some distance between her and Nakago.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like everything between Nakago and Yui is it's honestly, and I've done a lot of research about depictions of abuse in fiction. I spend a lot of time with it. The way Nakago manipulates and gaslights and abuses Yui is honestly a really, really good portrayal. Like, everything about it, like, parts of it maybe are exaggerated because everything in Fushigi Yugi is kind of hyper real, hyper exaggerated.
Yeah,
but,
anime.
but like, his tactics are real tactics that people use. And the reality is that, like, once people get a little bit of distance between themselves and their abusers, then they are more likely to listen to people who sit down and say, hey, this is fucked up. So that sort of, just that last little bit, I thought brought it to a really good conclusion. Just that particular piece of their arc.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I know that was something in the early episodes where we were all kind of going off some hazy, several years old memories.
Definitely.
And I think we were preparing for that to be really bad and for them to kind of vilify Yui and turn this into like she's awful kind of story. Mm-hmm. And it really never did. It did I think, we've talked a lot about that line they walked between like not making her nothing but like not making her like just a passive victim, but also not, but also having a lot of sympathy for her. And I think they brought the conclusion to that. I think it was really, it was strong. I think they did a really good job with that central story of the girls' friendship, which is so nice to see that as a major focal point of the series. And the fact that Yui and Miaka are able to kind of, through much fantastical trauma and adventure, able to work through that and still be friends. It's good.
Yeah, it's really important. Yeah, and
especially when we consider all the media about like women competing and their friendships being destroyed over the man, that Fushigi Yugi, kind of pushed back against that narrative and found a way for them to kind of work through that is, again, I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, there are definitely things about Fushigi Yugi that are a lot more clever than people give it credit for. And that, my whole thing's like Fushigi Yugi is sort of about teenage anxieties, and like, the tension between like, things that are desirable, but also this, the scary dark sides of that. And and I think that really shows in the way things are reconciled, because Miaka, in the end of the show, she also comes to embrace those responsibilities and those hopes and those fears, and it's no longer about being pressured into things. It's about choices that she's making. So yeah, like, I think Fushigi Yugi messes a lot of things up, such as, and we'll wrap that around to Nakago in just a second. Fushigi Yugi fucks a lot of things up, but it also does. There are very, very clever things about it if you dig under the surface. Mm-hmm. But yeah, speaking of things that get fucked up, how about that Nakago backstory?
How about this evil bisexual? Fuck.
Okay, do we want to do Nakago and then kind of circle back around to like the finale and sort of Miyaka's final wish and how that works out?
Yeah,
or do we want to talk about? Do we want to finish with Miaka? Okay, so we'll do Nakago now and then we'll swap. We'll shift over to that. Okay. Go.
I hate it.
I assume we're talking specifically about Nakago's backstory. I would also like to point out that he was carrying Soi's corpse around for like a week, and that really, really creeps me out.
Oh God, she must have gotten so stinky.
I don't know why. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. It's very in line with Nakago being like creepily, I guess, a romantic gesture. I don't know.
No, I mean it's it's brilliant in a way that I'm pretty sure the show didn't intend, because I think the show means it to be like, oh, he really loved her and just didn't realize, and he can't let go of the corpse. But like, I was sitting here reading it as, oh, he cares more about the fact that he has something to cling on to, and it's about him, and not giving her death and burial with any kind of dignity. Cool.
Damn.
Yeah.
It true though.
It true. Bad man.
Yeah.
And then we get his backstory in the last episode.
And I am angry because, in theory, Nakago is the kind of character that I like, but fuck this guy, though.
There is a universe where Nakago's backstory is introduced a lot sooner, and we see him as a sympathetic villain.
Yeah, as a more overt foil to Yui.
Because he could be an interesting character if that had been introduced earlier, like all of his very understandable rage, and how he's manipulating the situation for this one final conclusion, and that everything is motivated by revenge for all the suffering he had to go through as a child.
Or if he had ever seen any of himself in Yui and felt like a scrap of remorse about that.
But he's like, it's all totally shoehorned in. One of those moments where like, this makes no fucking sense, but emotions, right? Like, because Tamahome can somehow look at his memories because he punched through him in like the cleanest impalement ever.
He bled cherry blossoms.
Tamahome's hand should be nasty after that.
Well, Nakago bleeds cherry blossoms, so it's okay.
It's fine.
But yeah, like, there's so much about that part that is mishandled that could have been done really well, and it's really like disappointing.
Also, the implication that he's queer because he was molested.
Yeah. Oh god. And like the way that like the fucking harem girls were giggling, just like, oh, what's he gonna do with this kid? And it's like, ew, girls, please have some fucking sympathy for the poor child. Oh. Yeah. Anyway.
And isn't there, now it's been a while, but isn't there a bit in the manga where like it reunites him with his mother as he's dying in the afterlife for some shit because he had a sad childhood, so he gets, a happy conclusion?
There's an implication that there's an implication in one of the final pages where, I mean, it could just be him like imagining it before he dies, but it does kind of look like his mom and Soy are like welcoming him into heaven. So that happened.
Soy, you deserve better.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, again, the backstory is too little too late. It's really shoehorned in there. And again, like I said last week, cool motive, still murder.
Cool motive, still murder and abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, well, that's what, yeah, like, it's still, like, the things he did are still, like, unconscionable, unforgivable things. Like, even if you want to kind of make him, even if they wanted to make him the kind of villain where you could see where it was coming from, I still don't think there's any way that I would feel, like, really bad for him in this final moment. I think he could make a very interesting mirror to the Suzaku warriors, which we've talked about a little bit before, is this, this idea of, like, the sorrow and cruelty in your life, which there are other characters in the story who've had bad things happen to them in their pasts.
Right.
And, like, whether you try to, move on from that and grow stronger and find some hope and try to find some meaning in that, or whether you just get angry and lash out and decide that fuck the entire world, fuck everybody. And again, I understand why Nakago would feel that way after everything that happened to him. But if you want to tell that story, you gotta put in the legwork a lot earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I'm in more, and even if like he would still be an unconscionable character no matter what, like you said, but I am totally in mourning for this lost plot line where they really hammered hard on his parallels to Yui, and like this is her looking at him and realizing that this is what she's being pushed toward becoming, and him realizing that he has become the same thing that was done to him and is repeating a cycle, or deliberately refusing to realize this, and where the wasted potential.
Yeah, it's this is a weird comparison. Nakago and Akio, to me, are somewhat similar characters.
Yes.
No, I see it.
In that they're both manipulative gaslighters who prey on children. Both of them have backstory issues that explain why they are the way they are, that can be sympathetic in the right light. The difference is that I think Akio is very compelling, and I think Nakago is just a piece of shit. I do flip off the screen when both of them are on all the time, but the way when I say that, I mean like the narrative that is told with Akio is more compelling. I think the way they do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't think Utena ever tried to make excuses for Akio.
Oh no, that's the other thing. Like Utena does not forgive him. Utena explains why he is the way he is, but it does not forgive that behavior, and it starts to feel in this finale like they want us to just feel bad for him.
Yeah, just like, oh, he's doing all of this because he's so tragic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so tragic.
Yeah.
He could.
He had a sad childhood.
So did like 90% of the characters in the show. Most of them did not go on a roaring rampage of regicide.
Nice alliteration there.
Thank you.
But yeah, no. Anyway, I think. Is there anything else to say about Nakago?
Hate.
Fuck him.
He's disappointing.
Eat shit, Nakago.
Yeah, you're the worst.
Anyway, but so then moving on to the finale of Miaka and Tamahome's.
Oh no, wait! I do have one more thing to say.
Oh, yes.
One more thing to say. Hey, remember weeks ago when we mentioned, or I mentioned, that Iwatase in her author's notes for the manga kept asking for Nakago Tamahome Dojinshi? I want you all to think about that and sit with that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Why would you do that to us?
I had burned the lick from my memory, and then it happened. I was like, oh no, I forgot about the lick.
Oh god.
Oh, it was so icky. I did not like that.
Yeah, there's gross. Because there's no way for that to be like not gross.
Not sexual assault from
Yeah.
an adult to a teenager?
Yeah.
Yep.
I wasn't gonna go there, but yeah.
Par for the Nakago course. He's terrible.
Anyway, good things.
I mean, not necessarily. So, but because the conclusion between Miaka and Tamahome, I have never been satisfied with.
Really?
Yeah,
which part doesn't satisfy you? Because first of all, there is kind of to me a really most of the changes between the anime and the manga aren't super duper significant. Like the change maybe the framing a little bit, but it still gets basically the same general story across. There's one kind of major change, which is that Miyaka's final wish is completely different.
Huh.
what was it in the manga?
So in the manga, after they steal Seiryu and kill Nakago, like everything just kind of starts going back into the book on its own, and their world just kind of gets automatically fixed because reasons. So Miyaka's final wish is for Tamahome to come to her world, to be able to exist in her world. But then he disappears, and she's sad. And then they go, and then the very, very end is the same, where this guy who has memories of a past life shows up and flashes the ring, and she's like, oh my god, he's back. In the anime, though, the world doesn't go back to normal on its own, so Miyaka's final wish is... I like it better in the anime because I think it shows her character growth a lot better in that sense of, I need to take responsibility for the probably deaths, given the number of buildings that they destroyed in downtown Tokyo. But also the property damage. The sense of, I need to take responsibility for that. I need to fix this. And, and Tamahome and I, it would be selfish of us to wish for our own happiness when all of this around us has happened. And I think that does a much better job of kind of putting a cap on Miyaka's arc in terms of finding a balance between kind of this martyrdom thing she had going on versus being really selfish, and then being able to take responsibility and accept living in her own world.
I agree.
So I find that ending satisfying when they make that wish and Tamahome's okay with it, and they're like, this is what we're gonna do, we'll figure it out. And they have their little goodbyes with everybody, and they're very cute. Tasuki promises not to say he hates girls anymore. Yay.
I liked that part. And I know it was an editorial mandate, but it doesn't make it less stupid.
Oh yeah, you're about to go where I was gonna go
to the post credits.
Go ahead, please go.
Okay, so I have never cared for well, no. That's not true. The particular way Fushigi Yugi does it, where love makes miracles happen. You know, I've gotten over a lot of what I decided I hated in my cynical phase. I'm more accepting of like certain sentimentalities, but love conquering all just because I have never really cared for. I think that probably originated when I was a small child, and I told my dad that love was the most powerful thing in the world. He said, no, because what if someone loves murdering people? I think I was like 7 when this conversation happened.
Thanks, Dad.
Wake up, child.
My dad said a lot of weird shit like that. One time I asked him, when I was a very small child, I asked him if we were Native American because we were talking about it in class, but they didn't really explain what Native American was. He's like, well, we all of us were born in the U.S., in America, so we are native to America. And my small child brain was like, what? So thanks, Dad. Thanks for saying some really weird, confusing things. But anyway. But yeah, so that has really always been something that stuck with me. Is not caring for the miracle because love. So I would have been more satisfied with an ending, and also meeting your true love when you're a teenager. First love is the truest, strongest love. So like, I would have preferred an ending where they are separated and Miaka just kind of has to move on with her life. Because yeah, like it's sentimental in a way that doesn't work for me.
See, my issue with it was more that, and for, in case you're just listening to us but haven't watched the episodes, it ends with a carbon copy of Tamahome being reborn, who has all these dreams of a previous life. So essentially, he's a different person, but not really. So there's no change there, even though this is a completely different human being, and I hate that.
He's real world. He's real world Tamahome. Yeah.
Yeah, he's AU Tamahome, where the AU is actually the real world.
Right. But it's like this is a different person who grew up under different circumstances, but it's okay because he remembers all the thing from their last relationship, so it'll be exactly the same.
Is it a spoiler for me to say this actually gets covered in the OAVs? Yeah,
that is what part 2 of the manga, which is the second, which is Oni 2 in the OVAs, we'll kind of talk about like who this guy is and what he's like, and etc. So we'll get into that a little bit more.
Just being Tamahome.
Yeah.
That part bothers me too. The concept of like, and that's actually, I know that people in here have complicated feelings about Please Save My Earth. That's one of the things that that was one of the themes that I liked about that series. It's like, are you defined by your memories of a past life? Are you the same person?
And the answer is only no if you got reborn as 2 boys. God, sorry. Please go on.
I was gonna say we can't go on a rant about Please Save My Earth in the middle of this.
But yeah, like, so that is definitely something else that has like gotten to me over the years as well.
Mm-hmm. I am a sap, a sucker, and I love the idea of people being karmically connected to each other over multiple lives and finding each other throughout the centuries over various reincarnations. That is, it's very deeply tied into a lot of classic Chinese and Japanese literature, and I've always found it fucking beautiful. And so when reincarnated Tamahome shows up at the end and Miyako starts tearing up, I don't even care about their relationship that much, but I tear up too.
Okay, here's my caveat.
Because I am a sap and a sucker.
No, I think I get it, because, like, I hate this trope lest, like, if they had both been reborn, or if Tamahome from the book had just magically found a way through love to appear for her. It's the specific fact of that, like, she's the same, but he is a reincarnated version of that person that feels uneven to me in this case. Sorry, please go on.
And also, what happened to Tamahome after the events of the series? Did he go back to the book and continue to live his life and then was reincarnated? Did he just disappear into the ether? What happened?
I mean, technically he was fictional, so...
I mean...
But I don't like to think about that because that means all the other characters disappeared into the ether too.
Oh, no.
No, it's headcanon time, y'all. If there is a real world version of everybody, then that means there's a real world version of everybody else.
Good.
Maybe someday they'll all come together and they'll have a big party again. It'll be great.
Right. So, but like, to get really personal, like when I was a few years ago. God, 5 years ago, because life is short, y'all. 5 years ago, I was falling in love again. And like I said, I spent, too long with my first boyfriend because I romanticized the idea of being with one person for your entire life, right? And, like, for some reason or another, I was, like, thinking about Fushigi Yugi. And just how that ending just really didn't work for me. And I actually sat down and wrote in one night a whole fanfiction about, like, what if Taka did not magically appear? What if Miyaka did have to move on with her life and, sort of have to go through a grieving process about that relationship and about losing, basically her life in the book. Or, if she, and who she could have been without that. And the stages of her grief. And it's like the story starts when she's like turning 30 and like pregnant with her second child. And she's like, married to a guy that she met in college. And, so like I wrote that as a sort of a way of like sort of working through what the feelings that Fushigi Yugi had left me with and the ideas and sort of how certain ideals had fallen apart throughout the course of my life.
Fanfiction is good, y'all.
Yeah.
It can be very cathartic, for sure.
Yeah. I have a very strong connection to the series. It's flaws and strengths alike. So that was definitely something that, I had to actually work through.
No, yeah, but like this series doesn't, I mean, I read this series as a kid, but it didn't mean as much to me as it does to you guys, but that doesn't, and like I've come out the other side of this thinking, it's okay, like the high highs and low, there's high highs and low lows and kind of a bunch of stuff in between, and ultimately it's maybe not for me, I won't watch it again, but the fact that it is so important to you is important, like that's good, and just because it's not for me doesn't mean that it's a worthless show. Like it's good, and it's very good at speaking to a certain to a certain emotional mind space.
Yeah, and the other day as I was sort of talking about finishing up the show, Jared, my boyfriend, who I was first starting out with when I wrote that fanfic, he asked me, like, do you think it holds up? And I was like, that's actually a more complicated question than one would think. Because it's like... it's like, does it still, when I watch it, does it still, like, stir a lot of emotions in me? Do I still love it? Yes. Do I love it in the same way I did when I was 13 years old? No. Would I recommend it to someone who has never seen it before? Probably not. So, that was sort of an interesting question for me.
It's definitely a hard sell to a modern viewer, at least from my perspective.
That's my... So, I mentioned this in a tweet the other day, but I'll say it here too, because probably most people didn't see that. I went into this, I suggested this watch along to you guys, and I really went into it thinking, this will be like my last hurrah with Fushigi Yugi, and I will realize exactly how, like, bad and problematic it is, and how it absolutely doesn't hold up, and it'll kind of be like, and we'll sort of, give it some good-natured ribbing and some criticisms, and it'll be like my breakup date with this show that I've, that has been kind of a large part of my life for the better part of 15 years. And we got into it, and the opening theme played that first episode, and I was like, oh no, I think I still love this. And then the ending theme played in this final episode, and their rings glittered, and I was like, oh no, I definitely still love this. And if anything, it like rekindled the flame. I finished it and was like, I should go write Fushigi Yugi fanfic. That's what I should go do.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, genuinely. Like, I think this has been a good and healthy process that everybody should do with things they kind of have on sacred pedestals, is go back and give them a hard look and be harsh to them, but without feeling the need to give up those feelings and those moments that are important to you and the stuff that works.
Well,
like, I truly do.
What really surprised me about... Yeah, and I think what really surprised me about this rewatch is a lot of things that in my head I had I guess misremembered into being a lot worse than they were.
Yeah.
Were a lot better. So it was hard. So that made it harder for me to break up with it, like the stuff with Miaka and Yui, and that sort of like pushing back against the competition narrative was much better than I remembered. On the other hand, there was stuff that was much worse than I remembered, like them being just relentlessly crappy to Noriko, especially in those early episodes. Despite the fact that I think Noriko was still a very likable character. They did a character poll like halfway through the Genbu Kaiden manga, and they had every character on it, and Noriko was still like in the top 2. So
yeah,
because they're the best. They're the best character objectively.
They're great. So, which, is again that sort of complicated balance, and it's frustrating because like Caitlin said, it's a hard one for me to. I can't really recommend it without a lot of caveats, because it is very messy, and there is a lot of stuff about it that 20 years later does not hold up particularly well. It is a show that makes an effort to tackle some progressive feminist issues. Some of it tackles better than others. All of them, I would say, are flawed in some aspect. But it's not like Sailor Moon or Utena, which I think still hold up pretty well. Like there's a few things with Sailor Moon that haven't aged well, but overall, like it's not hard to pitch it to 13, 14-year-olds, I think, nowadays. Utena's easy. Like, there's really nothing in Utena. I don't think there's anything in Utena that I'm like, it doesn't age well.
Utena
that show was way ahead of its time. Utena is like the unicorn.
The only trouble with Utena is it's getting further from the tropes it was commenting on, so you have to give it more context, but it's still a damn fine show.
Yeah.
I mean, and even then, I think there's still a lot that holds up.
Yeah. And with Fushigi Yugi, I think so much of it is, rather than being kind of as we talked about before, rather than like, it challenges some narratives, but a lot of it is really just trying to encapsulate that feeling of being that age in that time period. And because of that, it doesn't age as well. It's very much a product of mid-90s Japan, or early 90s Japan. Which is so frustrating to me because, again, I love this series, and I love being able to share the things I love with people. And even after this rewatch and the realization that it's maybe not as bad as my memory had made it out to be, there's still that sense of, I don't think modern teenagers would be able to necessarily connect with it as well. Which is why it's my number one show that I want somebody to remake and make some big changes to it. Because I would love to be able to share that with people.
The one thing I will say is, I don't know that I would, especially for queer and trans kids today. Maybe don't.
No.
But I do think that this show, as you were saying about, you've remembered things worse than they were, and I certainly did too. I think that's evident in past episodes where I was kind of half remembering shit. But this show does deserve to be talked about. Like, I think it gets dismissed a lot, and that I don't think is fair to it. Like, it's a hot mess, but it was real important and real ambitious.
Yes, and yeah, it's the fact that it tries and doesn't succeed, I think, you can at least have a conversation where shows that don't even try, there's nothing really to talk about.
Yeah, like, if we can still be talking about Evangelion, which is also a hot mess that I love, we can talk about Fushigi Yugi.
People will never stop talking about Evangelion. And I think people are also a lot harsher on it. Like, I did, these, like, quick, very unscientific polls on Twitter last night that was like, how do you feel about Fushigi Yugi? And it's like, I love it, it's okay, or it's garbage, right? And, like, not affectionately calling it garbage. Like, it is a series that I dislike. And now, like, for a long time, it's garbage had a very strong lead. It's kind of evened out more overnight, but, like, and then I did a similar poll with Outlaw Star, which, was another show around a little later than Fushigi Yugi, but, it had a lot of the same kinds of problems. It, was a messy narrative. It had some bad gender stuff. It had, like, uneven animation.
Animation gay
ranging
joke character.
from
I like Fred, but two-dimensional. I like Fred, but two-dimensional gay joke.
Right, like,
at least Noriko has an arc and a personality and is more than just a punchline.
Right. So it's like, yeah, like, I mean, Fred's just like a gay panic character.
Yep.
Fred deserves justice for Fred. I'm sorry. Please go on.
I would say that Fushigi Yugi has a lot more redeeming qualities than Outlaw Star. I like Outlaw Star.
Yeah, I haven't rewatched it in a long time, but I have fond memories of it for sure.
But Outlaw Star got much, like, no one thinks, or very few people think Outlaw Star is garbage. Over a third of the people who answered to the poll on Fushigi Yugi said that it was garbage. And it's just, like, people are so much harsher on media aimed at teenage girls. I feel like there's almost like a boys will, and this is something that I have been guilty of too. There's a certain boys will be boys mentality about stuff, but there's no, like, oh, girls will be girls. It's more like, ew, icky girl stuff. So I think people are particularly unkind to Fushigi Yugi over the years just because it is of the shoujo from the 90s that has sort of survived, quote unquote survived. It is probably the most deeply flawed, but I don't know. I feel like it deserves more than just that.
It shouldn't just be consigned to a trash bin. Yeah, I agree with you. Like Vrai said, it's worth talking about and going over it and remembering it as, even if it is ultimately a product of its time, I think it is a valuable product of its time, and there's a lot that you can sort of get from the experience of watching it with that knowledge that it was a show written in the 90s by a 22-year-old.
And this is literally why I decided that I'm not going to just trash on media aimed at teenage girls. I'll still criticize it.
Yeah, and I think we've definitely done that. Like, Fushigi Yugi has definite weak moments, and we've certainly criticized it for those when they happen.
But I'm not gonna sit there and say, "Oh, this is trash. It does this, and this dumb thing. Ah, ha, ha, ha! Isn't it so funny how bad it is?" I'm not like I'm over that, because like, I almost thought about like asking people about like Dragon Ball Z, you know, which is
a hot garbage show that was part of my childhood.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't have any sentimental attachment to Dragon Ball Z. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, me neither.
But like, if I did that same poll with like Dragon Ball Z, it would be like 90% love it.
Absolutely, and it is. My God, that show is full of shit, and I can tell you about it because there's some sitting on my bookcase right now. To further serve your point.
But yeah. Anyway, we should probably wrap up.
Yeah,
we did run a little long. And
we'll have
a little bit more. I have a feeling our final OVA episode will be we'll be covering 13 episodes, so it'll probably run kind of long too, and we can touch on this a little bit more. But I kind of think of the OVA episode as kind of a bonus episode. Like this is definitely an ending. Like if you like there's more to be explored with these characters, and Oni 2 I think does some good and some bad stuff in terms of fleshing out especially the supporting cast. So I'm looking forward to getting into that, but yeah, I kind of see it kind of as a bonus episode. So I think it's good that we had this conversation at the end, sort of looking back on the TV series as a whole, before we jumped into the roller coaster that is upcoming. Speaking of the OVA roller coaster, listeners at home, if you are watching along with us and you've not seen this before and you want to get into the OVAs with us, we talk about there being 3 OVAs: Oni 1, Oni 2, and then Eiko Den. That's typically how they're considered, but the way they're packaged, especially on Crunchyroll, if you're watching it through their streaming, which I would imagine a lot of people are, they're called Fushigi Yugi OVA and then Fushigi Yugi Eiko Den. OVA is both Oni 1 and Oni 2, so you'd start with that and then go to Eiko Den after that, which is kind of the sequel to the sequel. The Oni OVAs have a weird history. The first one's anime original. The second one is based on the second part of the manga. We'll get more into that when we actually do the podcast proper, but I did kind of want to give people a feel for what they how to find it and what you should be looking for as you're tracking that down. So, happy hunting.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, thanks for having me on for this. Like, genuinely, you guys. I know it's...
of course.
It's been fun. I loved sharing this thing that you loved with you two.
I've enjoyed it. I'm glad you've been here to pull us back a little bit from fangirling unnecessarily at times too. And I think we've had some good arguments and conversations.
And we've had some
Right,
conversations.
You're always welcome.
Yeah.
I have definitely proposed doing a watch along on my problematic 90s isekai anime, so you'll get yours. you'll get a chance to get back at me.
Well, I think we like that one too, so we'll see. But yeah, we'll watch your problematic fave as well.
All right. Anyway, all right. So thank you for listening to Chatty AF. At some point in the future, we will be covering the Fushigi Yugi OAVs all in one go, as Dee explained. And if you like what you heard, you can find us on the web at animefeminist.com, on Tumblr at animefeminist, on Twitter at animefeminist, and on Facebook at animefem. Please also, if you enjoyed this, support us on our Patreon. All help is appreciated and helpful. Even $1 a month can make a big difference for us.
Thanks for listening, Annie fam. We hope you join us for the bonus watch along of the OVAs.
Yeah.